Hello. The subject for today is being awake. There is a prayer which I frequently recite in the morning, and I will read it right now. It is by Baha'u'llah. I have wakened in thy shelter, O my God, and it becometh him that seeketh that shelter to abide within the sanctuary of thy protection and the stronghold of thy defense. Illumine my inner being, O my Lord, with the splendors of the dayspring of thy revelation, even as thou didst illumine my outer being with the morning light of thy favor. Literally, I suppose that is referring to waking up from a night of sleep, having had dreams where one's soul is experiencing some level of unity apart from the body, trying to reinforce that in your mind and in your consciousness. But I think in a broader sense, that prayer is also about the fact that we are living at the spiritual dawn, the dawn of a new era, the beginning of a global civilization, although we are only in the embryonic stage of that right now. So being awake, in that sense, is coming to a realization of who one is. When I recognize that I am a servant, that I have no authority, that I have no dominion, that I have no sovereignty at all, that I am entirely powerless and dependent upon the grace of my Lord. To me, that is being awake. Baha'u'llah wrote in a letter, O King, I was but a man like others, asleep upon my couch, when lo, the breezes of the All-Glorious were wafted over me, and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing. And he bade me lift up my voice between earth and heaven, and for this there befell me what hath caused the tears of every man of understanding to flow. The learning current amongst men I studied not, their schools I entered not. Ask of the city wherein I dwelt, that thou mayest be well assured that I am not of them who speak falsely. And it goes on from there. Going to take the liberty of putting that into a kind of modern diction. Certainly I'm not pretending that this is in any way a translation, but when I think about that statement, what I have tried to do is to imagine that Baha'u'llah was speaking modern English and how he might say that. So here's my attempt at that. And again, this is just my own words, my own reaction to what he said. Your Majesty, I was just a regular guy. I was taking a nap on my couch. All of a sudden, I felt this glorious wind blowing across me, And suddenly, I had this inner knowledge, this innate knowledge of everything. But whatever I know, it's not from me. It's from God. It's from the Almighty, all-knowing God. It's Him who commanded me to speak. As a result of that, I have been horrendously persecuted. However, I have not studied current knowledge, and I am a very honest person. A while back, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and Baha'i friend, and this person asked me, he said, why is it that Baha'u'llah would ask someone a question? And I paused for a second to think how I could best answer that question. And what I said was, because he was a human being. And the person just said, kind of laughed and said, oh, I think it is easy to forget that when the prophets are here in this world, that they are human beings. Certainly they are much more than that. They have a higher divine nature that we don't have. They can speak in the station of the unity of God. Only the prophets and God Himself can do that. We cannot do that. They can speak with the voice of God's sovereignty, so Baha'u'llah would sometimes say, like this is God telling me to say something. We can't do that either. We cannot channel. We cannot reveal. We may, if we are lucky, be occasionally inspired and blessed, but that's about all. But Baha'u'llah, when he was here, was a man. And I think it's interesting the way he describes his experience. Now, how much knowledge he had of who he was before 1853, when his revelations began, I don't know. But obviously, when all of this knowledge came to him, he was very surprised. He was a man. He was a 19th century Persian man, a merchant, living like a merchant. And all of a sudden, he awoke, and he recognized his divine station. Maybe like a veil, in a sense, was removed between his human mind and the will of God, the cause of God, the Word of God. And he began to speak with the voice of God. Well, again, we can't do that, and yet we can be awake. Now, here is why I have decided to dwell upon this subject today. There are all sorts of people. I run into them all the time on the internet, including on YouTube, but other places as well, who call themselves awake. They say, I am awake. There's one fellow, I won't mention his name, he runs an internet radio show with his son, and he is an evangelical Christian, and he very proudly states, not only am I a Christian, but I am also awake. I presume that means that there's a possibility that somebody can be awake from his perspective and not be an evangelical Christian. Now, what he means by awake is not what I mean by awake. When he says he is awake, what he is talking about is the fact that he has bought into the Illuminati conspiracy. He knows what they are up to. Us versus them. The elites. They are out to get us after all. And many of these conspiratorial type people, sometimes they call themselves patriots, sometimes they refer to themselves as militia, they have various other names that they use to describe themselves, but to them, being awake is a recognition of us versus them, that I've finally awakened to the fact that there is this secret elite which operates in very covert ways and which is systematically trying to take away my personal freedom, and some would even say which is trying to kill us. There are some conspiratorial people who believe that there is an elite who is trying to exterminate a huge section of the global population. Well, that kind of awakeness is not, from my perspective, being awake. In fact, it is the opposite of it. Being awake is coming to a recognition of unity. A person cannot be awake and believe in a conspiratorial elite who is out to get us. That kind of mindless populism which has been responsible for the rise of many authoritarian regimes, most notably in Nazi Germany. The Illuminati conspiracy itself had its heyday in Nazi Germany. So, from a Baha'i perspective, to my understanding, and from a critical realist perspective, when one comes into unity, or non-duality, or as Roy Bhaskar sometimes calls it, the cosmic envelope, a very poetic term, then one is awake. That is what it means to be awake. So what the conspiratorial type people refer to as being awake is not being awake at all, in my opinion. Until next time, this is Dr. Mark Foster. Have a good one.